Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Joanna Ho. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. A plan for mainland-bound travelers to isolate locally gains traction. A popular eatery in North Point marks its second last night of business. And the wife of former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak is given a 10-year jail term for corruption. Chief Executive John Lee says he has secured preliminary support for the so-called reverse isolation proposal for cross-border travel. A makeshift hospital near the frontier may be used to test the scheme, Chloe Feng reports.
After slashing quarantine time for airport arrivals, the chief executive hopes that a reverse isolation scheme can increase cross-border travel. John Lee said officials from Guangdong province and Shenzhen had expressed preliminary support for the plan, in which Hong Kongers will isolate locally before crossing the border under a closed-loop system. It will be based on the 7+3 formula, 7 days in an isolation facility, followed by 3 days of quarantine at home. The 10,000-bed makeshift hospital in the Lok Ma Chau Loop near the border could be used as a trial.
Main purpose is to, first of all, alleviate the burden of hotels in the mainland and making use of the facilities in Hong Kong, so that there will be more opportunities of allowing quarantine facilities for the wishful travelers.
It's not known when the scheme will be launched, if there are any fees, and whether there will be an increase in the cross-border quota, now capped at 2,000 daily. Chief Secretary Eric Chan will head a task force that will work out the details. Lee was asked if Hong Kong has given up on seeking quarantine-free travel to the mainland.
We are looking at all options beside this new quarantine arrangement.
Lee added that 13 new task forces will be set up to improve cooperation between Hong Kong, Guangdong and Shenzhen on the development of the northern metropolis, finance, employment and shipping. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
Hong Kong has recorded over 10,000 new COVID cases for the first time in over 5 months.
We still have an increasing trend of the number of confirmed cases. So the number of cases exceeding 10,000 is within our expectation. The proportion of severe and death cases has not yet been increased, but of course the absolute number has been increasing because of the increasing in the denominator.
All but 244 of the 10,586 cases logged today were local infections. A 15-month-old girl is critically ill with fever and convulsions in United Christian Hospital after she contracted the virus on Tuesday. But her vital signs are stable and she can breathe on her own. Chuang also confirmed plans to expand the vaccine pass to cover children aged 5 to 11. She said there will be a grace period and more details will be announced next week. Students across Hong Kong went back to school today at the start of a new academic year, with COVID still causing disruptions in society. A secondary school principal is optimistic about meeting the Education Bureau's new COVID vaccination requirement, while a primary school head is concerned that many cross-boundary students cannot return. This secondary school in Kwun Tong can already resume full-day in-person classes, as over 90% of its students are double-jabbed against COVID. But to maintain full-day teaching, it must secure a third jab rate of 90% by November. Both primary and secondary students must be triple jabbed if they want to participate in extracurricular and mask-off activities from next month. This student prefers full-day classes, saying that allows her to make more friends on campus. She said she'll receive her third jab next month. Principal Lam Yinling said her school has attained a third dose rate of at least 15%.
咁相信鼓勵佢哋再打多一針呢，唔會係太困難嘅。
But she's not worried about meeting the new requirement of 90% within 2 months, as many of her students are keen to take part in school activities. At this primary school in Shengshu, students have got back into the habit of doing daily RAT tests and reporting the results to their teachers before heading to class. However, about 300 of its cross-boundary students on the mainland were unable to turn up because of border restrictions. Many can only attend lessons online.
期望啦，即係能夠有點樣係有限度或者係點對點有個閉環式嘅嗰個交通安排。
Principal Chu Wai Lam suggested that the government arrange point-to-point closed-loop transport for them to travel to Hong Kong. He said the attention span and academic performance of students will worsen if they miss in-person classes for a prolonged period. Customs officers have smashed a syndicate that is accused of laundering more than $400 million. They arrested 4 people, the suspected mastermind, and 3 young men who were recruited to make bank transactions. Janice Low reports.
Customs officers disclosed that they arrested 4 suspected triad members who allegedly laundered more than $400 million. In an operation codenamed Moonshadow, officers raided 4 premises and seized smartphones, credit cards, and bank documents. They arrested 4 men, the suspected mastermind, and 3 younger members, all aged 21, who were allegedly ordered to set up 64 traditional and virtual accounts in 9 banks and 2 virtual lenders. They are alleged to have laundered $411 million in more than 9,000 transactions between 2019 and last year. The 3 declared themselves to be students or working in low-paying positions such as clerks or restaurant staff when they opened the accounts. Customs found that their background and financial status did not match the transactions. There were over 4,800 large transactions from more than 700 third parties. The highest daily number of transactions reached 82, while the biggest amount was $7.5 million.
And the difficulties is we need to process a lot of fund flow. We need to analysis the fund flow between the youngsters, and then we have to identify who is controlling them from behind the scene.
Wong said although the suspected mastermind has been detained, other triad members could be controlling the syndicate.
Customs believed the 3 younger suspects were recruited by the mastermind through a mutual friend. They were offered $10,000 to $20,000 each in exchange for setting up bank accounts. Janice Low, HKIBC.
It'll soon be last orders at Tongpo, the famous Dai Pai Dong in North Point. The seafood restaurant that made its name by serving beer in bowls occupied several stalls at the Java Road Municipal Services Building for 30 years. Earlier this month, the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department informed tenants that they had violated the tenancy agreement and ordered them to leave the premises. Tongpo was told to move out by tomorrow or face prosecution. Our reporter Macy Mock is now at the restaurant. Macy, it seems things are getting hectic over there.
Yes, Joanna, it could be past the midnight rush, but the crowds are still pouring in, even though it might be past the dinner rush. And I'm currently sitting with James right now. Hi, James.
Hi.
Hi. So how many times have you been here?
More than 5 times.
More than 5 times. Now, James, what's your favorite part about this restaurant?
It was about the atmosphere and the drinking culture.
The drinking culture. And so knowing that this could be your last time in this restaurant, how do you feel right now?
It's kind of sad, but it's happy that there's like everyone here.
Awesome. Now, James actually have told us that one of his favorite things is drinking. As you can see, the bowl here, it writes fighting on the bowl. So how about we cheers for that, all right?
Definitely. Hi,
all right. Cheers! Okay. All right. Thank you, Joanna. Back to you.
Thank you, Macy. Overseas, the wife of former Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak has been sentenced to 10 years in jail for corruption. Rosmah Mansor arrived at the Kuala Lumpur High Court to hear the verdict in her case, in which she was charged with accepting bribes in return for government contracts. The 70-year-old had pleaded not guilty, but the judge said the prosecution had proved its case. Rosmah, who has been derided for her extravagant lifestyle, was also fined $210 million. She has been allowed to remain on bail pending an appeal. Last week, her disgraced husband Najib began serving a 12-year jail term for corruption in a scandal described as the world's biggest kleptocracy case. China has denounced a United Nations report on Xinjiang, describing it as illegal and void. The UN's outgoing human rights chief waited until the very last minutes of her term to allege that Beijing violated human rights in its western region. Wina Wong reports.
The long-awaited paper concluded that serious human rights violations have been committed in Xinjiang under Beijing's counterterrorism policy. Michelle Bachelet accused the system of having broad and open-ended concepts that leave plenty of room for officials to interpret and implement powers. The report said Uyghur Muslims and other ethnic minorities were arbitrarily targeted by the system. And it noted what it called credible allegations of prisoners facing torture, forced medical treatment, and sexual violence. All this may constitute international crimes, in particular crimes against humanity, it concluded. China's representative in the UN slammed the report just before its release.
We all know so well that the so-called Xinjiang issue is a completely fabricated lie out of political motivations, and its purpose definitely is to undermine China's stability and to obstruct China's development.
Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin described the report as illegal and void and said it was orchestrated by the West. Beijing urged the UN to investigate crimes committed by the West in their own countries and abroad. Wina Wang, HKIBC.
The Hong Kong stock market had a downbeat start to the new month, dropping to a 3-week low on fears of interest rate hikes and a COVID lockdown in Chengdu. The Hang Seng Index lost 1.8% amid reports that tech giant Tencent plans to trim its holdings by about 100 billion yuan this year to ease pressure from investors and regulators. Tencent fell slightly, but there were bigger losses for Meituan and Kuaishou, in which Tencent has stakes of more than 10%. Meituan dipped nearly 6%, while Kuaishou 2.5%. Consumption stocks were dragged down by a COVID outbreak in Chengdu, home to 21 million people. Shipping shares sank because of cross-strait tensions. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed down 357 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent was down $2.60, Alibaba down $2.10. Coolern up 45 cents, JD.com down $1.80. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, euros at 7.85, pounds at 9.08, Australian dollar at 5.36. Over to the UK market, FTSE 100 is down 91 points. On to the weather now. Fine and hot tomorrow ahead of a sizzling weekend. The mercury will hit 34 degrees and even hotter on Saturday. No escaping from the heat until the middle of next month. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Joanna Ho. Good evening.